All right, welcome everybody. Happy Friday, TGIF, Friday Night Fever, uh, whatever have you. Welcome to the AFC Northcast. Welcome to our 2020 NFL Draft Extravaganza Palooza Mania, where we'll mostly just talk about the AFC North. This friendly voice, familiar voice, is Joey, and I am here with our Pittsburgh blood, Chad. You're going to get so much secondhand NFL Network, Yahoo Sports, Draft Wire, and PFF scouting. It's going to be ridiculous. How you doing tonight, buddy? Yeah. Oh, heavens. Oh, there you go. Very nice. All right. Oh, man. I don't know what kind of action you could have gotten on that. It would be like minus 7,000 in Vegas. Like, ooh, how long ago uh did you guys make this bet? Oh shit. I think a lot of this is smoke screening. I think there's teams that are super interested in Herbert and Jordan Love at the top of the draft, and where we are full on in draft strategy smoke screen misdirection season right now. Um, So I wouldn't be too worried. I think I would be very surprised if Tua made it out of the top five. Whether it's a team that's already there or a team that's going to trade up, I'd be surprised. Yeah. Yeah, I don't I mean Aaron Rodgers, I don't even remember really why, but he wasn't like Tua. He wasn't like a national champion like I don't know. Cal was like the next level down type of program at the time, like the ceiling for Cal in those days was like I don't know, some non Power 5 bowl like the Outback Bowl or some shit like that, like so I think Tua's the next level up. But for your friend, tonight some Wonderlic scores came out for the quarterbacks. Official Wonderlic scores. Jake Fromm had the highest at 35, with presumptive number one pick Joe Burrow right behind him at 34. And there's only 8 on this list, but I saw a list with all 12. Tua had the lowest with a 13. So I think Jim Kelly had like an 18. Ryan Fitzpatrick had like a 48. The highest score you could get is a 50. The second ever unanimous league MVP got a 13 a couple years ago. So I think the Wonderlic test is good for deciding whether you'd be like a good biologist or maybe like a good lawyer, but quarterback, I don't know. And then so I got to digging, and I guess Tua got a 13 on a Wonderlic that he took in at Alabama in 2018, and then at the combine he scored like a 19, which I don't know anything about that, but all the official lists that are out say 13. So that's been buzzing on Twitter a little bit tonight, so I thought it'd be interesting to bring up. I can hear you. Oh, heavens. Yeah, I see you talking, but your little thing is not going up, and I don't know why. Shit. All right, hold on, guys. Since I'm talking for everybody, give me a sec. Gotta love it. Something happened with Discord. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We are all the way on. Here we go. All right.
Some really whip crack editing on this one when it goes into wherever we put it.
You should be back.
Okay, hopefully someone will text me.
That'll
let
just
me
be
know.
lost audio, I guess. Man, that sucks.
Look, all you guys missed is nothing important about the pandemic. 2 good beers. Wolf King by Rusty Rail. Thank you, Jason. Focal Banger. that I purchased myself. You want to buy this if you want to be super hoity-toity. And I didn't say anything important about the quarterbacks, I don't think, except that I have a bet. I'm going to win another beer if Tua gets drafted in the top 15. And apparently people can hear me now. So, Joey, you've tried to silence me time and time again, and I will be heard. The Steelers will be heard. And you know what? I'm here for Justin too because you've silenced him probably, and that's what's going on here, isn't it? You just
he's
want to be doing AFC Northcast by yourself.
he's tied up in my garage. So
So,
basically, all we talked about was Wonderlic scores for quarterbacks came out, and Tua had the lowest score in the draft class, but he had the equal score to Lamar. So I don't think it's necessarily an indicator of anything. I don't think it'll affect his draft stock really at all. Do you?
no, because people have watched him play so much. It's like he's pretty smart. Like he reads, you
Right.
know, he makes his reads. I don't know. I think that most of the intelligence stuff honestly gets broken down, and actually, so maybe it will affect him in the meetings. You know, they run you through some game tape, they have you talk about it, but they're still video conferencing. So, I mean, if Tua's dumb, they're finding out about it when he's breaking down game tape, not from a test where you do crazy multiplication and weird spatial tests or something.
Right.
Have
Yeah,
you
they
ever?
would. We would all know if Gruden QB camp was still happening, and he
Ah,
had him on the whiteboard with Spider Two Y Banana, and I miss that show so much. He's out there whacking dudes with pool noodles, and
dude, I have always been very pro John Gruden as a TV personality. I like his positivity. I like his energy. I don't care if he's like overly positive. Is that a problem? Is it a problem to be too
no, it's
excited? Like
great. It's fun.
it's it's even better when the player isn't that good. It's cute. It's
Yeah.
like it's such a sweet little puppy. He's saying that, whoever.
And we're kind of seeing his head coaching career now. We're kind of seeing the continuation of like some of his crushes in the quarterback camp with like the Mariota move. It's like, oh, like, yeah, Gruden just loved Marcus Mariota on
Sure.
quarterback camp and was like, oh, hey, I know that guy.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is like they might be kind of good. Like everyone's trying so hard to make fun of them, and like, dude, they might have a GM that used to be a TV guy and a coach that was a TV guy for a bunch of years. They might just be TV guys that are building a good team in Las Vegas. Damn
Yeah.
Raiders. Golly.
Jeez Louise. All
Oh
right.
man.
Not much news in the division this week. Kareem Hunt signed his tender. I saw that today, second round tender. So the Browns backfield, we're going to get a full season of that potential really dynamic two-headed monster with Kareem and Nick Chubb and see what Stefanski's able to do with it. Since Freddie Kitchens couldn't figure out how to make that work in the red zone this year. But I mean that's good news for Browns fans. You're
Heck
bringing
yeah.
back your starting lineup at the skill positions on offense from last year. So
Yeah, I mean, but the Browns are doing all the right things personnel wise. They are at that point where it is now time to make that into a team. So, well, I'll tell you, they're at that point in 6 days. So, what are the last personnel things that the Browns need to do to finish this puzzle, Joey? What do they need to do at pick number 10?
I think they need to shore up the offensive line. I think that is unless they're absolutely in love with Delpit from LSU and he's there, the safety. So I have their three weaknesses that they need to address as tackle. We've talked about their offensive line woes since last offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Inside linebacker, where they lost Kirksey and Schobert, and so like Taki is the incumbent there, and I guess Mac Wilson, and safety, just addressing some depth, losing Randall. Um, they made some free agent signings with what's his name, Sendejo.
Yep,
but
safety,
it'd be
veteran
nice to get
safety.
some young blood in there. So I think Delpit is one of like the flashy move that they could make.
Yep.
Uh, but they also have the potential to hop on like a cornerstone offensive tackle, which would be huge for Baker.
Yeah, I think they actually have a chance to do both. You know, there's pretty decent safeties in this class, but it's not like the last couple years where the top safety is going to be a top 10 pick. There's a lot of variability in projections for the top couple safeties, anywhere from kind of the mid first round to kind of the second round. So the Browns actually have a chance of kind of addressing a couple of those needs early and getting like difference making type talents potentially. Um, Particularly like Delpit, who, from what I've read, really could have been one of those top picks last year, came back and had a pretty bad year tackling,
Yeah.
which your position is called safety, like you're the last guy. So, you know, the Steelers probably wouldn't draft him, but you know, if you want to take a chance on a guy that could come back and shore that up with good coaching or whatever, he's a guy that could be around with their second pick, and with the top 10, there's four tackles that everyone's all talking about. Four super gifted tackles. These guys weigh like 350 pounds. They're broad jumping 10 feet, which is a lot if you're not paying attention. Everything sounds like a lot to me. I like broad jump like 5 feet. I don't know. Uh, you know, they're just crazy big, huge, athletic people. The top four. Um, for my money, from what I've heard, the two that are most likely to land in the Browns number 10 spot are Tristan Wirfs, senior or junior from Iowa, and Andrew Thomas. Um, I've heard different directions on which one they should pick. I'm kind of the mind that with my football knowledge, if there's two and they get to choose between them, they're winning. Like that's good. That means there's a
Yeah.
better chance that their scouting department got to pick. But I like the sound of Tristan Wirfs, you know, Iowa, you know,
Yeah.
those Midwestern guys, and it sounds like he's just a little bit more polished. So, and this is something that we're probably going to come back to over and over again. Um, and it's really hilarious for me because I never paid attention to the draft really very much. I just trusted the Steelers to make good picks, and I learned who they were when they started doing awesome stuff, and it worked out. But now this year, I've read all this stuff. I signed up for the Athletics so I could read a bunch of Dane Brugler's 250-page scouting report, a bunch
The
of
beast.
nonsense. Yeah, yeah. And the hilarious part is the Steelers A don't have a first round pick, and B, these players are going to make the least difference ever because there's going to be so little off-season stuff. So, if you want a player that's actually going to help your team this year, you want him to be pretty polished. So if it was me, I'd be leaning towards Tristan Wirfs over Andrew Thomas, who's a junior out of Georgia. Um, but they're both huge. They're both great. And I think the Browns will probably be pretty happy with any of them. So tackle, I think tackle in the first round. I've heard a couple rumors about Isaiah Simmons, inside linebacker, dropping to number 10. Is that
Oh.
crazy?
Oh, I don't know if I like that. I'm not really. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Isaiah Simmons. I don't know if he really fits in the NFL as an inside linebacker, and he'll end up as one of, like, possibly even like a package guy, like a nickel linebacker or something like that. Um, I don't know, man. I'm not sure if I am into Isaiah Simmons so much. I
Dude, he's
think
crazy. I think you're just wrong, dude.
I could be. Yeah, that's very possible. I just feel like we talked about the safety depth, and like I think you can really get like a ball hawking safety. There's some linebackers you can get on day two. Like I just I just don't know. I just don't feel good about Isaiah Simmons. It's just something I decided. If he plays all the position, like it's like the if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Like if he's a linebacker and a safety, is he good? It like can he excel at either? Like pick one and be it. And I think we'll get into that a little bit down the road. There's some linebackers that are like trying to be edge guys too, and it's like, yo, just be an off-ball linebacker or be an on-ball linebacker and commit, because I think in the NFL it's just what it takes.
Well, I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't just defend Isaiah Simmons very briefly, because I spent some time last week talking about how interior middle linebacker was being undervalued and underappreciated by a lot of media who are trying to calculate positional value. So I need to defend the Browns taking Isaiah Simmons if he drops, and I'll do it right now. His tape is crazy. Like in college, he could play all the positions. I am 100% with you, Joey. He will not be able to do that in the NFL. Here's why. His combine numbers, which for the record, absurd, were very similar to one Ryan Shazier, who was on track to be a defensive player of the year type guy if he didn't break his back. So to me, he can be like a coverage, like gap shooting, aggressive, super fast middle linebacker who excels in this kind of spread out offensive game. I agree with you that he won't be able to be your Joe Everyman where you can just line him up at free safety or nickel corner, but I think he could be a difference making either interior linebacker or maybe even strong safety if that's where they chose to play him. And I think the Browns would really want to consider taking him if he dropped to number 10 because there's other tackles that supposedly they might like, but there aren't safeties or linebackers that are anywhere near Isaiah after this point in the draft. So if they're lucky enough to see him, I'd be hoping they pick him. Just saying.
I've fallen in love with some linebackers. Isaiah Simmons seems to be like outside of quarterback, like the flash, like the flashy name in this one. Like he's got the high like spark scores and like you know um,
Yeah.
the combine stud. So it'll be interesting to see if he does drop that far. The Browns have some options. I just think tackles, taking tackles outside of day one, like, are you going to get a guy that can even start?
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, they they could get a guy like maybe Isaiah Wilson or something like that, somebody who's maybe not as polished, and then we go back to what we talked about before, where it's like, can they round him into form to start this year or not?
Right.
So yeah, it's a fair point. I think at the end of the day, though, there's only one scenario that plays out that's bad for the Browns, and that's if somehow all four of these tackles get taken before the 10th pick and Isaiah Simmons, because
Yeah.
they don't really need other players that would be a good value there. So
So the other two tackles you're talking about, Makai Becton and Jedrick Wills.
yeah, who I think most people think would be the first two, although I have heard Becton, he's just like he is the biggest, most giant, crazy athlete of all of them,
Yeah.
and he's kind of the least polished. So he's the one that has the most diversity in where he's going to get picked and how well he's going to end up playing in the NFL. Um,
He's the one that some front office that is the equivalent to the girl that thinks she can change every man is gonna draft. Like, but I can change him. I can teach him.
I can't blame you for thinking that way. Like, I mean, at some point you're just so big and so fast that it's like, yeah, this is going to be fine. Like, we'll
Yeah,
work it out.
yeah. The other thing against him for me is he played at Louisville, and the AC. Yeah, like yeah, you have Clemson there, but the ACC defenses that he played against, the other guys are Andrew Thomas is from Georgia, Jedrick Wills is from Alabama, and Wirfs we already talked about is from Iowa. And so like those Big Ten and SEC defensive lines are another animal from what Becton faced in the ACC.
Yeah, that is also a fair point. Yeah, they should probably just take Tristan Wirfs and just have a good year right now.
Are there any other safeties that you looked at other than maybe Simmons or Delpit?
Safeties?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I've looked at a bunch because I think that that's a position that the Steelers could address. I
Well, let's
think
talk
that,
about some safeties. I love safeties. I mean,
all right, I think that the kind of second round guys that the Browns could be looking at, there's Jeremy Chin. He's a small school guy. He's from Southern Illinois. He's like line up everywhere, and he better have because he played at Southern Illinois. That's kind of my attitude
yeah,
about that. Um, he's strong and fast, and he plays special teams. So this is the kind of guy that you want to draft if you want your team to be better now, even in a shortened off season. Um, his kind of downside is that he's a little bit of a risk taker. He's a route jumper, and he likes to really spy on that QB, and he can lose track of his responsibilities. And when you're playing free safety center field, you don't want people behind you. So that's risk. But if you're bringing him in on a Browns team that has a couple veterans that'll train up some of his stupid decision making out of him, and take advantage of his athleticism, he could be a really good guy. And then there's Antoine Winfield, who I will definitely talk about more when it gets to the Steelers. But his dad was a NFL player. He's pretty little, um, but he just keeps making plays. Like every time you say he's little, he forces a fumble, and every
good
time
old
you say
fashioned ball hawk.
dude, he's a strong tackler. He's just a big time. He's a little bit honey badger reminiscent. Like you can say he can't do these things, but then he just keeps doing them.
Yeah.
Um, so those are guys that I kind of like in the second round area that if the Browns take could make me sad.
Yeah, I saw another guy that I got into like the Twitter film thread wormholes on that I like is Ashton Davis.
Mm-hmm.
He's another ball hawk type of guy. And I think he may go like second or third round. He's
Mm-hmm.
physical, and he's got more of the size that you'd look for over like Antoine Winfield Jr. But his big knock is that he's a little reckless with his body, and he flies in for tackles and misses some tackles. Um, but man, I love a good ball hawk and safety. I had Winfield and Davis on there with Delpit as possible day two guys for the Browns.
This seems like a good time to throw this in there. So Joey and I talked about this a little before the show, but there's two kind of projection guys that I used a lot to do my research. One's name is Gil Brandt, and he does a top 150, and the other one is Dane Brugler, who we mentioned before. Gil Brandt, per the Steelers Depot, they do great research on the Steelers, but then they get into rabbit holes and do great research on other stuff. So they researched Gil Brandt's top 150, and over the last 7 years, in his top 100, 80% of those players get drafted in the top 100 picks. And it's about the same for the top 50 and the top 64, which would, top 64 would be the first two rounds. So he's pretty accurate at getting these guys where they're supposed to be. Ashton Davis is number 57 in Dane Brugler's top 100, number 51 in Gil Brandt. So that's a guy that you're going to be looking at probably in the second half of the second round.
Good, that's good knowledge right there.
Yeah.
Anybody else you want to talk about? Any linebacker day two linebacker guys?
For the Browns,
Yeah,
interior linebackers. Let's see. Who did I like? This sucks because now I have to look at my Steelers notes and I have to talk.
I'll throw
I
one out. We talked about Chin's value as a special teamer, something that he can bring right away.
mm-hmm.
Um, Die from Oregon,
Yeah.
I think, is one of those. He's kind of like an Isaiah Simmons light,
Mm-hmm.
where he's like one of these rangy type of guys. Um, and his weakness is like physical strength. Obviously, if it's what you would expect for like a smaller guy at that linebacker spot. But he played. It's pretty likely he'll be playing some special teams when he gets to the league, and he could be one of your special team stud backup linebacker type of guys.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him in the top 100 on Brugler. I think I've seen him mocked to the Steelers kind of in the later rounds. So that would be maybe if luck would have it, a day 3 type of guy, someone that you could get some value out of sneaking in there later. Um, but in terms of difference makers early and just focusing on who's going to make your team better right now, I think we agree if the Browns get themselves a right tackle at pick number 10, that's the big one. Like
Yeah.
that changes the whole outlook on this team and this offense. Um, and if they can get a spot starting middle linebacker that gives depth behind Mac Wilson and what's it, Simone Taki,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a plus as well.
Yeah. In the new old uniforms that the Browns have. What's your take on those? Those came out this week.
They're great. I think they look cool. They're snazzy. They're bright. They're bold. There's not a lot of crazy business going on. The numbers don't look
Yeah.
silly. They didn't try to put the land or any sort of nickname on the front of their jersey in like weird squatty font like Atlanta did. Um, I'm not usually a person that notices or pays much attention to uniform changes, but you guys have gotten me, paying attention to this now. And I will say, I like it. I like the colors. I like the stripes. I like the bold. It's all good. Good job, Browns.
Yeah, I like it too. I've gone on and on about the big bold numbers. Um, I even prefer them over like the Ravens numbers right now, but the big throwback white numbers that the Steelers have on that black jersey is very similar to what the Browns have now. Um, I love it. And apparently they listen to the fans and they're adding some orange pants because orange pants weren't on the original like press release. So
I love how worked up people get about this stuff. But you know what? The fans are the ones that want
that's
to
what it's
see it,
for.
and
Yeah,
they buy the stuff. They buy the costumes and the jerseys and stuff, and they pay to see the game. So if the fans want orange pants and orange is one of your two colors, you better get some damn orange pants. Get it right up right now.
after the Odell Beckham trade scare, uh, Brown's Twitter has very quickly moved on to what is the field paint job going to be for this year. So that's what's happening right now on Cleveland Browns Twitter on day 1 of draft week, basically.
Man, I'll tell you what, they focus on some weird stuff, but I guess you've got to. You've got to. You when you can't look down from 30,000 feet and just see a complete package that makes you proud, you got to get right down in the weeds and nitpick at the details and find something that you can be excited about, like that
That's
field
right.
paint job. I couldn't tell you what the Steelers do on the field. I think they paint Pittsburgh in one end zone and Steelers in the other, right? Isn't that like what you do?
I guess I don't know. And the big logo at midfield.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Steve.
Last preseason, the Ravens did this logo at midfield instead of like the BR shield. So
Mm.
that was different. I don't know.
How did that make you feel, Joey?
It was weird to look at. It's like you're watching the game and you know something's different, but you can't put your finger on what it is, and then it's like, oh. But
I think I'd
otherwise, I
like to see
don't
that
really
little
care.
man, that little
At midfield, the little
brown
elf,
man.
that is coming up
Yeah,
a lot. So the big one that I've seen going around has the little dude at midfield, which is preposterous in reality. Like to put
why?
that at midfield.
Why?
I guess the Browns have had a barren 50-yard line for a few years, like no logo. I don't know if that's true or not, but I read that tonight. And then script Browns in the end zone with the AFC logo on one side of it and the helmet on the other side of it.
I like the helmet. The helmet's fine. It's not as cool as the little man, but I got to
I like
read
when the
about the little
Ravens
man.
paint the end zones black for color color rush blackouts. But
Yeah, that's cool. Dude, it just occurred to me.
just
Did
paint
we
the
already
whole field
talk about
black.
the Bengals? Did we just like
You
scream
skipped
right?
over the Bengals. We talked about the order, and you were like, "So the Browns." I was like, "All right, fuck it, the Browns, let's go."
All right. We've talked enough about the Browns. We're going to
That's
talk a
right.
lot about them because honestly, again, great personnel moves,
Yeah,
possibly great coaching moves, and there's nothing to be anything but excited about. The uniforms look good, the players play good. This should be a fun team this year, unless they lose to a really bad team in week one and are a train wreck for the rest of the year, a la 2018/19.
Yeah, and
So
they've got 4 picks in the top 100, and
yeah,
they could fill some holes that they need, grab a couple starters, and be in a pretty good spot. So,
yeah,
all right,
good stuff. Good job, Browns. You might just be turned into a real franchise here.
let's move on to the team that's been on the clock for the last several months, the Cincinnati Bengals. They have a pick in every round. It is the first pick in every round. So the Cincinnati's front office not doing much to take advantage of compensatory picks and draft value and stock. They're just playing it straight up. I think everybody probably agrees that Burrow is the move to make at number one. You agree there?
I 100% agree, both in my heart and also for the Bengals, who have, according to media rumor slash journalism, whatever you believe happens in the media now, the Bengals have maxed out their legal allotted video meeting time with Joe Burrow. Like they have spent all the time courting him and showing him all their facilities, probably walking him around the building, showing him his locker, doing all the zooming and the FaceTiming. So he's the guy. Yeah, they're going to take him. And I would like to say that the Bengals have 8 picks this year because they have 2 first rounders. Jonah Williams, left tackle, drafted last year, hasn't played a game yet. He will be introduced to the team this year, so he's basically like a new player.
Yep.
And as part of a nice little segue from the Browns to the Bengals, one great piece of kind of scouting that I heard from the Daily Bengals podcast is that they compared Jonah Williams' college tape to the top 4 tackles this year. Um, and they found in their grading system that he would have come out fourth or fifth. And this
I
is a
heard
guy
that
that
too.
got taken like number one, basically, in the year before. So, Browns, these are good tackles. I know it's not a skill position. When you watch the highlight tape, it's going to be hard to figure out who is who. And you're going to be like, dang it, why didn't they circle him before the play so I could see and all this stuff? But just trust us. These guys are really good at their jobs. They're going to make Nick Chubb's job that much easier and Baker Mayfield's. And no matter which one, like they're all very, very good. And Jonah Williams is very, very good. So hopefully he will improve the Bengals' offensive line, and Joe Burrow will improve everything else.
Hopefully.
And then, yeah, other needs basically. The Bengals have so many needs, but let's just focus on, where they would think they need. So QB, we have to officially list it just in case they do some sort of bungling and don't take Joe Burrow. That is their biggest need. Their offensive line is just not good. So they could take almost any position along the offensive line and probably improve. But probably tackle is where they're most focused. As we noted time and time again, anybody. So linebackers, they need inside linebacking presence desperately. And then wide receiver, safety, tight end are all positions that we would probably expect them to address later in the draft. But if their 2-person scouting department knows something that we don't, they see some value, they could jump up in there and take a Cole Kmet or Antoine Winfield in the second round, and it would still be making their team better because they have gaps in those positions. So what do you think they'll do after Joe Burrow?
I think there's some linebackers that are going to be really enticing for them,
I got a
but
guy.
it's all going to be a matter of value because I think after the first few, you drop a good bit on the inside linebackers, And
Hmm.
early in the second round is kind of like a no man's land where they could easily like just grab a receiver because there's a zillion of them.
Yep.
Who's your guy, your linebacker?
For the Bengals,
Yeah.
let me tell you about a perfect Bengal. Willie Gay Jr. This is a guy whose tape, while limited, is amazing. He flies all over the field. He's crazy in coverage. He's fast. He's strong. He's a sure tackler. He can do it all. He's ranked number 59 on Dane Brugler's top 100 draft board. I didn't have time to look him up on Gil Brandt's, but he's right up in there in the 50s somewhere as well. You're thinking, how is a guy who plays middle linebacker and can do it all way back down in the second round? Let me tell you how. He punched his quarterback in the face and he cheated on a test and got suspended. He is a huge character issue, a la everyone else the Bengals draft.
Perfect. Yeah.
I know. So this is like when you try to think, what kind of guy do teams take? The Bengals are the team that always takes that red flagged player who every other team just keeps letting them fall, letting them fall. The Bengals are always the team that takes that player. So I'm not saying they're going to reach for him in the second round, but top of the third, when all that other talent's gone and they're like, oh my God, Willie Gay Jr. is still on there. Oh my God, look at that tape, look at that coverage. They're gonna take him. They're just gonna pick him. Inside linebacker, Cincinnati. You're looking at it. Willie Gay Jr. out of Mississippi State.
There you go. I love that. I don't even want to talk about any other linebackers. It's so perfect. It's like when Pac-Man Jones decided to like rededicate his career and ask people to stop calling him Pac-Man and call him Adam. It's like the Pac-Man essence lifted out of Pac-Man and into Willie Gay Jr. and he's just punching out his quarterback and just getting suspended for academic stuff. It's like, come
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah. It's
It's
yeah.
perfect. He carried the torch.
He's a classic Bengal. I don't think that they would be foolish enough to take him in the second round, but he's ranked 131 actually on Gil Brandt. So big time discrepancy between Brugler and Gil Brandt on Willie Gay linebacker, and that's perfect. The Bengals are going to be at the top end of that number. You just know it. And for the record, if he manages to not cheat on any tests, which should be easy because he won't be taking any, and to not punch his quarterback, which harder but still doable, he's like a really good player. Really, really, really
Yeah.
good player. Super athletic, super good at everything. So, you know,
Yeah, and it's very easy at the top of that second. They could go for like if they're not interested in moving on with AJ, which it seems like that relationship's probably too fractured for any realistic expectation of that. Like a guy like Denzel Mims, who's like one of these big physical guys, could come in and maybe learn from AJ for a year and hope to fill those shoes at the top of the second round.
there's a crazy lot of good wide receivers, and I'm worried that we're not going to do that position total justice. Is there anyone else besides Denzel Mims who you could probably talk about for the Ravens as well
Oh yeah.
um, that you think is a good fit for the Bengals in particular?
I think Higgins is another guy who's long and is like one of these contested catch machine type of guys, where like the knock on him is physical strength, which that's very easy to address. Getting him in a pro weight room with a dietitian and all that shit in the pros. So he's another guy I think up at the top. If they don't take a guy in the second round and they wait till the third, if like a Pittman Jr. is there in the top of the third, maybe him. And then even further down, I have KJ Hamler circled because he's like John Ross. And he's like the fast guys that the shitty teams always fall in love with, like the
Yeah,
Raiders and the Bengals.
I'm a little lower on him just because if you're going to get a starter, I think you want to try to move Tyler Boyd back into the slot. And
Yeah.
KJ Hamler is probably a natural slot receiver,
Hmm.
whereas like a guy like T Higgins, who might fall because of his poor combine, he's big. He's like 6'4". I didn't realize that. Like he's a
Yeah.
big dude.
He's so
I was like,
slight though.
yeah, I don't think I care.
No. No, I mean, look at the guys in Pittsburgh that have had, like Marcus Wheaton wasn't as like tall, but like he produced for you guys. Martavis was, like the scrawny frame
Yeah, he
big
looked like a
guy. Like,
basketball player.
yeah, yeah. The only big upside to Hamler, and he would not be a second round, and probably not even that pick at the top of the third round. But he probably comes in and day one can compete for return minutes. So
Yeah. Although Darius Phillips,
right,
we don't
yeah.
want to mess with Darius Phillips, so we can't root for that. We love our Darius Phillips, right? Are you still on the Darius Phillips train, or am I on that by myself?
Oh no, no, I get down with Darius Phillips.
All right, good. Yeah, there's a couple other guys that are kind of outside guys. I don't know as much about Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State. He's a
No, me
kind of
neither.
top of the second round type of guy. Yeah,
There's so many receivers in this draft.
I
It's
know.
stupid. I feel like the
Denzel,
Ravens are gonna whiff on one
I
anyways.
think it's all about. I think if you want to see, if you're a Bengals fan and you want to see a receiver in the top of the second round, I think you should be hoping for either T Higgins or Denzel Mims.
Yeah.
One guy who's shot up the draft boards after the combine, and one guy who's come down, probably both irresponsibly so. Both very talented players that are big, play the outside, move Tyler Boyd to where he's supposed to be. You have a pretty dynamic offense with one of those guys, plus Tyler Boyd and AJ Green.
Yeah.
Also, Daryl commenting, Daryl, you do not want Willie Gay on the Patriots
Oh
right now.
no.
Dude, the Patriots are in a full blown rebuild. I've said it time and time again. It's over. You are no longer playing from a position of strength here. You do not need Willie Gay in that locker room, sir. Even though you've got the culture and all that stuff, I don't think you want any part of it.
No, I
Patriots will
don't
find.
want Willie Gay on the Patriots. That's
Oh,
a
you
disaster. No. Bill Belichick would turn him out so fast. Heavens.
turn him out. Wait, what do you mean by that?
Turn him into a stud.
Mm.
Look what he's done with like these guys that like the guys that are freak athletes. Belichick turns them into monsters.
Or
Chandler Jones and Jamie Collins. Like
or he cuts them. That's what people
then he
forget.
cuts them.
Or not everybody produces right off the bat or ever. Like they eat he cuts so fast. So I don't think with a draft pick that you're investing that much in, you want to take that sort of risk. And frankly, the Patriots have done some kind of goofy stuff with their top draft picks the last couple of years that I don't think a lot of their fans are super impressed by.
Yeah,
So frankly, like,
like
not
N'Keal
to turn
Harry.
this into a Patriots podcast, but like, dude, you drafted the running back who's okay. You drafted N'Keal Harry. Like, how about we just draft somebody that's good, not try and take this chance and have your culture change their whole personality, or implode even better. It'll be fun for me to watch. Um, so yeah, anything else on the Bengals that we want to knock out? I think we got some good receiver options for them. Linebacker is covered, and they're going to get Joe Burrow. Do you like Joe Burrow? Are you nervous about having him in the division?
I'm not nervous initially. Um, just because the Bengals seem so cruddy. I think it'll take him some time. I do have hesitation that he only had one good year and he couldn't start over Justin Fields at Ohio State, and like he couldn't
Dwayne
start
Haskins.
over Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State, and like until his first year at LSU was pretty underwhelming, and so we'll find out how much is Joe Burrow and how much is what's this guy's name, Joe Brady, and a plethora of insane weapons that they had at LSU. I mean, they had a skill. They had Randy Moss's son and what's it, Jefferson, and the other guy. Oh man,
Justin
I feel
Jefferson
like
is.
such an asshole.
Are you talking about the running back,
Nope,
Clyde
the other
Hilaire?
receiver. They
Clyde.
have a junior receiver or a sophomore receiver that can't come out yet.
Oh,
That's probably that's better than Justin Jefferson.
best part of this is that the only two college football games I watched for LSU, still can't name them. Try that on for
And then
size.
Edwards Hilaire, I freaking love that guy. I think he deserves to be right up in the top of the
Save
running
it.
back conversation. All right, I
Save it a
will.
little bit because we
I
might be able
will.
to talk about him when it comes time.
Okay. But yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think Joe Burrow's going to be fine. I'm not like I don't fear Joe Burrow. Um, I think he's a typical rookie quarterback, and he'll take. I don't think he's going to come in and just crush right away, because I don't think guys really do anymore. We
yeah.
got. I say it all
Plus,
the time. We got spoiled by like the couple years of like Russ and Cam and RG3's rookie season, and everyone
yeah.
expects that now, and it's just simply not the standard. Like,
No, it's
it
really
shouldn't
not.
be the expectation.
So, Bengals, that's okay. You've got a fun
Uh-huh.
team. It's going to be fun to watch. You got a new coaching staff that's in their second year, which is good. Give them a chance to build it. Let them
Yeah,
build it
and
a little bit.
he's
And
gonna have a leash. Zach Taylor's gonna be there a little while. Like,
but for the record, if the Bengals trade back, you can burn it down if you have to. I mean, but
yeah,
stay 6 feet apart.
send anthrax to the field in Cincinnati.
Just while you're rioting and turning the cars, just 6 feet apart. Everyone on a wheel. You know what I mean?
Wear a
Um,
base covering or something.
should we jump into the Ravens? The Ravens have, I think, 2/3 of the total draft picks in the first 3 rounds. So it's not really so much what positions they'll draft as what will be left for the rest of us.
Yeah, the Ravens are in surprise. The Ravens are in a really good spot. They don't, other than the Yonder retirement and inside. So they have two glaring weaknesses to me. That's filling Yonda's shoes and putting warm bodies in at inside linebacker. So I'd expect those to get handled in the first 2 rounds. I'm not particularly picky about what order they do that in, depending on who's around. But if it was me and he's there, I don't give a shit what else is there. I don't care if Joe Burrow's there at 28 in the first round. If Cesar Ruiz is there, I'm taking him because I love him. I've fallen in love, Chad.
I've got some notes on Cesar Ruiz, but I would love to just supplement your commentary. So please tell me why he's the next great Raven.
So Cesar Ruiz is an athletic, big, powerful, pulling center for Michigan, who everybody imagines would translate very nicely to guard. He is already very polished with his hands. One of his big strengths is that he's very good at resetting his hands when defenders try to put a move on him, which is very important. Hands and footwork are pretty much everything for these linemen. So watching him, there's like threads of just watching him pull, and it's a thing of beauty. I know it invokes Pouncy for you.
Sure.
I just fallen in love with him. I haven't watched a ton of film on the other guys because after Ruiz, I was sold already. Some other names, which I think would not be first round options, especially since the Ravens have a pick in the kind of the middle of the second round at 55, are Jonah Jackson and Muti. I don't know how to say his first name.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I have that one written down. Booty,
So,
but
but yeah,
he's
Cesar
huge.
Ruiz. He's my man crush in the draft right now.
Yeah, he's a guy that I've been kind of keeping my eye on, sort of slowly getting sad about because at first I thought he was like a real possibility for the Steelers because there were some other centers that were kind of being looked at above and around him, and now it's looking like it would be very unlikely that he would make it to their first pick of the draft, which is at number 49. Um, one other thing to add about Cesar Ruiz, it's going to be a positive and a negative. Start with the positive. He's 20. He is 20 years old. So we're talking about a guy who, if you draft him in the first round, you've got him from 20 to 25. I mean, you can really make your contracts work for you in terms of like the length of the career
Yeah.
and this guy. And then development, you feel like you've got all of his best days are so far ahead of him. To the negative side, the one kind of knock on his game is that he doesn't have like explosive athleticism. A lot of the strengths of his game are in his technique and in
Technical.
his mental, I guess, preparation. So, can he develop some of that in an NFL weight room? Probably. Probably he can improve it, but you wonder a little bit if he's, even though he's young, close to what his peak would be, which you certainly do not want from a 20-year-old. Um, and that's why, he's a guy that's being talked about in the back end of the first or second round for the record. Gil Brandt, number 47, Dane Brugler, number 39. So he's a guy that if you want to accumulate some capital, Ravens might even be able to trade back a few spots
Yeah.
and still get him. He's
I've seen
he's
him
tricky.
mocked to Kansas City too at
Yeah.
32.
He's
So,
very tricky. So I mean, from a media standpoint, to
yeah.
figure out where he's going to be, so it would be tricky to do that sort of trade back. But you never know. Yeah, I like him too. Cesar Ruiz, fun player, fun player. I thought you were gonna fall in love with a guy like Denzel Mims, but
I've
you went with
I'm
the trend.
so snake bitten about wide receivers and the Ravens that that's not even. Hopefully, Hollywood is a step in slaying those demons, but I have too much Travis Taylor, Brashad Perryman, Mark Clayton going on in my head to consider first round wide receivers yet.
This is going to be the only chance we get to talk about the top two of the second tier of middle linebacker after Isaiah Simmons in Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen.
Yeah.
Um, because the Ravens are the only ones situated to draft him and have the need. So, although I guess the Browns could potentially in a trade back scenario do some funny business and end up with. But what are your thoughts on those two middle linebackers? Do you like any of them? Do you feel like they could be Ravens?
Um, I've kind of, I feel like I've established myself tonight in this like weird, like traditional camp as far as players shitting on Isaiah Simmons and some of that. Um, so I'll just continue that. I like Murray better than Queen. Um, Queen is kind of a smaller guy. He's more of like the new age speed guys. Um, and he really held LSU's defense together through some injuries in the beginning of the year and kind of helped them tread water. Uh, but he's also a bit of a one hit wonder that way, 1 year wonder. Whereas Murray's a much more established, experienced starter. He's got a lot more depth of like quality play to work from, and he's much more of like a traditional guy. Um, his weaknesses are that he's a little aggressive, Murray that is, and he will over pursue and miss on some plays. Um, so both of those guys, I'd be surprised if either one of those guys is still there. Even I think at 28. Um, there's some teams picking ahead of the Ravens, the Saints, and the Pats specifically that like I don't know if these guys are going to make it down to the Ravens. Um,
Okay.
so that's my. What are your take on those two before we get in deeper into linebackers?
I didn't deep dive into them too much, and I've never actually emailed Steelers Depot, but they do such good film review, and I think what I want to do is email them and ask them how um, Devin Bush's college tape compares to Kenneth Murray, Patrick Queen, and Isaiah Simmons if they think it's appropriate. I'd be really curious. I'm in no position to make that sort of evaluation, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to him, to be honest. I think that you basically assessed it pretty well. Patrick Queen is a little bit of an athletic. uh, Marvel, and he's had a shorter burst to this point. I'm surprised that you didn't pick him because I think that the Ravens are the kind of team that could basically harness that really well. Um, under Wink, you take a guy like him and you say, like, this is your job, you will do it, and it will pay off for you, and it does. But they're very similarly ranked, so I'd be surprised if either of them. I mean, dude, Josh Bynes went to the Ravens and looked like he was like a starter, and somehow he was on his couch before. So they're
And
gonna
LJ
take,
for it.
yeah. So I mean, like obviously, like either of these guys would do well in that defense. Maybe not initially. Rookies are rookies. Like they don't read things right. They make mistakes. That's why Devin Bush didn't play all the time last year for the Steelers, and there's going to be again less off season. So I think one um, good point towards them not taking that early linebacker, even if they're available. Do the Ravens really want to start this guy anyway? And they'd probably feel some pressure too if they took him in the first round. And the Ravens, feast on having a really well put together defense where everyone's communicating well and everyone's on the same page. So if they don't think they could get the rookie to that level by the time the season started, they might be better served to just go a different direction.
I've got two other guys I want to talk about that could be second round guys at inside linebacker.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
the
think I know one of them.
the
Can I guess?
first, you can guess,
Jordan Brooks.
Yeah. He's the
Okay.
one that I really want.
Yeah.
Um, Jordan Brooks is 6 foot 240, and they consider him a little undersized. But there's a young man out of Miami who was 6 foot 235 at the combine. His name is Ray Lewis, and he's a tackling machine. And Jordan Brooks is a tackling machine. Um, he led Texas Tech in tackles the last 2 years. Um, Everybody thought Ray was undersized when he came out. So I think that that type of production is something that's really important, um, which is part of my knock on Queen. And another guy who's in the same vein but bigger is Malik Harrison at Ohio State. But
Can
both of
we
these
jump back to
guys,
Jordan Brooks?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've got one thing to add about Jordan Brooks, primarily from the Dane Brugler's analysis. And I did actually watch some Jordan Brooks highlights, and yeah, he's fun. Dude, watching linebacker highlights, that's fun
It's the
stuff. That's
best,
it's like,
right?
if you like baseball, you watch the shortstops. If you like football, you watch running backs, you watch linebackers. If you really like football and you actually know the game, maybe you watch the line. Fuck you, you know more about the game than I do. Um, Jordan Brooks had 20 tackles for a loss in 2019. Just so you guys know, that's like a massive amount. It is very notable if you have 10. Like 10 is like notable, like you did a really good job. And that being said, one of the scouting notes on him was that his height, being that he's a little short apparently,
Mm-hmm.
affects his ability to read the backfield, which means every single time that he reads the backfield, he tackles the guy for a loss. That's how I interpret it. If he, like if he can't read the backfield, but he gets 20 tackles for a loss, he must just live back there. Like,
Yeah.
talking about here. So, yeah, I think he's a guy that, especially in all the articles I've read lately, uh, he's a good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes a lot higher because the media is kind of catching up to
Yeah.
the scouting on him. Um, he's Gil Brandt's number 43 and Dane Brugler's number 67. So we're definitely talking second to third round.
Yeah.
But
It's a pretty big disparity.
I would not be surprised to see him in the second round. He does game coverage. It's like there just isn't a ton of snaps where he was asked to do it. Um, so hopefully he wouldn't end up stuck in man coverage or doing anything too fancy. But
Yeah,
at the very least, first and second down, then you go to the big nickel. Guess what? The Ravens have 1,000 people in the secondary, so it's fine.
right. Right. And I think as far as coverage go, he'd be more of like an LJ Fort guy where like he and Harrison both I think will be just fine covering running backs, but the deeper drops into coverage are going to be their weaknesses that need to be addressed. Harrison's just much more of a prototypical size guy than
All right, let's talk
Brooks is.
Harrison, and then everyone that listens all the way through to the Steelers, just remember all the stuff we said when we talk about the Steelers. What's your take, your full take on Harrison? Is that most of
I
it?
mean, I think from his size to coming from Ohio State and the type of running games and offensive lines that you play in the Big Ten, like he's awesome. I don't have concerns really with him handling running backs and the run game and making tackles. Um, but the new style of tight ends in the league, if he's asked to drop into coverage on guys rather than following running backs to the flat, some things like that, that's where his weakness is. But I think
100% agree
he's
with you.
highly, highly productive.
Yeah. So just to basically repeat what you said with different words, per Brugler, he's one of the top graded run defenders in college football in 2019. If you need to make a tackle, Bengals, Bengals, hello Bengals, hey. This is a guy you might want on your squad. He is just an excellent, excellent run defender. If you're a Steelers fan and you're like, hey, I don't pay attention to all these other teams and I don't watch college football because I have a life. His name is Vince Williams Jr. That's what you need to be thinking.
Yep.
Like, that's what this guy is. His coverage is definitely not awesome. But one of the pros of him compared to Jordan Brooks, because he's physical in the run game, he sheds blocks. He can get in the thick
Right.
of it. He can get someone attached to him and he can disconnect, make that tackle right there in the line of scrimmage, even after a guard or, a super stud like Cesar Ruiz has come down to the second level and gotten to him. He might be able to disengage and make that tackle. So he's definitely an exciting guy. Gil Brandt, number 88, Dane Brugler, number 72. So we're thinking third round,
Yep.
hopefully, is where you're looking to snag up your Malik Harrison jerseys, Ohio State.
Yeah, and I
OHIO.
mean, we've talked the whole division. I mean, everybody in the division could use an inside linebacker. I think. Um,
Yeah,
we've got good defensive lines in this division, and if a defensive line can keep these linemen from getting to the second level on the linebackers, like guys like Harrison and a guy like Brooks, that block shedding's not really his thing because he's so small. Like it can really benefit those guys.
for sure. Anybody else you're fired up about for the Ravens in the early round? You got 7 picks,
Um,
5 picks in
no,
the first three.
wide receivers. There's a zillion of them. I really like Pittman Jr. I think he's polished. He's got good ball skills. He seems like a guy. I feel like the Ravens have drafted a lot of guys that that are projects, and Pittman's not that. I feel like Pittman can come in and contribute right away. He's a big body. Uh, he's got the ball skills. Like route running is decent. Like I like him a lot.
Yeah, Pittman is a guy that we are definitely going to talk again a little. He is someone that had to be highlighted substantially for my Pittsburgh Steelers. He doesn't do anything crazy well, except, and it turns out this is important when you're a wide receiver, catch the ball. 2 drops on 140 targets, people.
Yeah.
If it touches the fingers, it stays in the hands. But other than that, he's not really like a standout athlete. But if you need someone to catch the ball, and it maybe isn't always thrown perfectly, Lamar,
Whoa.
Lamar Jackson,
Whoa.
he might be a good choice.
And then I guess to wrap up Raven stuff, on if by the chance that Ruiz is gone and Queen and Murray are gone in the first round at pick 28 there. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see the Ravens draft an edge guy. Epinesa has been like creeping up boards. And there's a guy from Penn State, Gross Matos, who I think could also kind of fit that late first round spot for an edge guy. Judon's on the franchise tag, so the possibility of long term deal is maybe not great, and they could always use more pass rush because it's still kind of a weakness for them.
Yeah, this is
They
a
ju-
weird year for edge rushing class because you basically have Chase Young, who's like Ohio State's yearly golden god, and
yeah,
then and then it's like kind of a mess. Um, I'm making a mental note, which if anyone wants to hold me accountable, that would be great because 90% I forget. But I really want to track this year's edge rushing class because it doesn't seem very impressive, but you know there's going to be a couple guys that turn out to be okay.
yeah.
Um, and if anyone can identify them, the Ravens might be one of those teams. They have great scouting, and they generally, aside from last year when they stunk at it, can rush the edge pretty well. They get those guys.
Yeah, and so those two guys, it's kind of like pick one or the other depending on what style you like. So Epinesa's more of a power guy. He doesn't have like great bend or great athleticism, but he wins with power and he has really good technique. And then Gross Matos is more of like your really versatile athletic guy who's got kind of a low floor and a high ceiling because his technique isn't quite there yet. But he's one of these like Monstar freak guys.
Yeah.
Are you planning on talking about Zach Bond? I think his first name is Zach.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about him briefly. We can with the Steelers in a sort of wishful thinking, Chad Dreamland sort of scenario.
We want to use him to kind of segue over then.
Yeah, let's talk about him a little for the Ravens because it's
Yeah.
so much more likely that they could actually get him.
Yeah. So I, in the same vein as Isaiah Simmons, I don't like Zach Bond because I feel like he doesn't know where he wants to be, or people don't know where they want to put him. He failed his urinalysis at the combine for a diluted sample, and he admitted it's because he was water loading and trying to retain water so he could get his weight up so that his numbers looked better as an edge guy. So he's kind of small for an edge guy, which isn't great. Um, and so he's versatile. He's kind of like a 1 year wonder, another 1 year wonder guy like Queen. Um, but that versatility might be questionable.
I think that the versatility, and I'll go positive here, and he's ranked, they're all in the low 30s, basically, all these guys, for Dwayne Brugler and Gil Brandt. When you think of Zach Bond's versatility, I think pull him off the edge. You make him like an off ball middle linebacker. He's great in coverage. I mean,
Yeah,
elite in coverage. And other than that, I can see how you go either way with his scouting because it's like he shows great like hands
he's a
and
good
like
blitzer.
yeah, he's a great blitzer and he's
Yeah,
got great hands, but also he's like small, so he can get washed out. And he's like really aggressive and enthusiastic in the run game, and he'll set the edge. But again, he's like small, so can he even do that stuff in the NFL? Some of his
right.
strengths are also the things they're saying are weaknesses. But to me, it's all about how you use this guy. And if there's one team, again, that can take a guy like this and correctly maximize his talent, it's the Ravens. And they need a middle linebacker like him that can cover. What were the Ravens doing all year last year?
Blitzing.
This is what the
Oh.
linebackers were doing. Oh, pass just went over my head. Like this is a guy that can do all the stuff. Who, what defensive coordinator can dial up a sweet looping blitz for Zach Bond where he can come from the middle around the edge? Like,
Yeah.
the Ravens can make this guy look like he could have been a top 10 pick. Like, I think he's a good player. I agree with you though that He's got weaknesses that if he ends up on the wrong team with the wrong people around him and coaching, that he could end up looking like a bust. And I promise you that the Ravens would not be one of those teams. He's
Yeah.
got such incredible speed and coverage and technique and work. He works, he's got the motor that the Ravens could turn him into an awesome player if they see it. They'd probably have to take him in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think he'll still be there at 55.
Mm-mm.
All
So
right.
obviously, I like him for the Steelers, but
Yeah.
no chance, no chance.
All right.
And so we
Moving
get
on
into the
to
Steelers.
Pittsburgh.
So the Steelers have the least amount of picks of all the teams, which is unusual for them. All the teams we're going to talk about today. They have 1 second-round pick, 1 third, and 2 fourth-round picks. Where again, I, you know, kind of hinted at this, but like your fourth-round picks this year, just so you know, everybody, whether you're a fan of the Broncos like Wayne, or anyone, your fourth-round picks, they're not going to matter. They're just not going to matter. There's no off season. There's everything is getting condensed, and that means rookies have less time to learn. They have less time to get in shape, less time to get the playbook. All the leasts. So your fourth round picks, shelve them for next year. That being said, it's all I've got. So we might delve a little bit into the fourth round. um, I don't know as much about how the other teams in the AFC North scout, but I'm going to throw a few things at you that matter to the Steelers.
Okay.
With their early picks, they like to take kids from big schools. They don't tend to take these small school crazy prodigy Antonio Gates from Kent State kind of moves. The guy that you might be thinking right now is Gaither. Akeem Davis Gaither is a linebacker that's been getting a lot of noise his way from Appalachian State. That's not the type of school the Steelers like to take with their first pick. They like young guys with their first pick. They like guys that they're going to maximize those contracts, like Juju Smith-Schuster, who came out second round, 20 years old. They like guys that they've gotten to meet. That's going to mean even more this year with no pro days. That means they played in a postseason all-star game, like the Senior Bowl, because the coaches and the NFL scouts get to go to those practices and they get to meet those players. The East-West Shrine game is another one of those postseason games where they invite kind of collegiate all-stars to play in. Team captain, which also in Steelers lingo, hearts and smarts. They like guys that work hard and show intelligence. They're high character. I'm not trying to make fun of the Bengals here, but they are risk averse. They don't tend to take those types of players, especially early. Um, they love guys that have a football bloodline. If their papas played in the NFL, the Steelers love that. They love that. And probably almost all teams, if this player has had a visit, if they have actually gone to Pittsburgh or they've had an interview at the combine, that shows a ton of interest. That means that the Steelers have probably a lot more likelihood of showing interest. That being said, here are the Steelers' holes in their roster. Believe it or not, relatively few. You can see that as a positive or a negative. Their team kind of is their team. It's probably not what you would consider a super elite team, unless Roethlisberger plays at his best, and then maybe nose tackle. That's the one position that they do not really have a player, a starter. They have. I've been thinking about him all day. You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm not even gonna say his name. He's been on the team for like 4 years. He's barely on the team. They need a nose tackle. They basically do not have a starter. Javon Hargrave was the guy. Safety, they basically have Edmonds and Minka and nobody behind him. So that's a team need. Inside linebacker, very similar. Vince Williams and Devin Bush, and very little known behind him. And then you get to the lesser needs: tight end, running back, and wide receiver. What the Steelers like to do in the offseason is they like to fill all those needs with free agents and then draft those positions anyway. So remember when they picked up Mark Barron and then they drafted Devin Bush anyway? Like, this is the kind of stuff they do. They don't want to ever be dependent on drafting a position. So they picked up Eric Ebron. Even Steelers beat writers are saying no chance they take a tight end now. Well, guess what? Eric Ebron is like on a 1 year contract. And Vance McDonald, they are what they are. Like, tight end is on the table. Let me just tell you right now. And running back and wide receiver are there because even though the Steelers have talent, Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner are in the last year of their contract. It's pretty unlikely they'll both get signed next year. Plus, running back and wide receiver are deep. So by the time the Steelers get a draft pick, you just got to take a player. We're talking about a year, again, where there's very low offseason. And if you want an impact player, you need to take a really good player. So at 49, you don't necessarily get to choose which awesome impact player you get. You have to take what's left. So wide receiver is super deep. Running back is devalued. That being said, here are a few players that I think the Steelers could target with their early round picks. Nose tackle, there's kind of a clump of good guys that are right behind the elite guys that'll go in round one. I think Justin Matabuke out of Texas A&M is the type of guy that you would look the Steelers to potentially pick in the second round, although I don't know that they would take a nose tackle in the second round because there's some guys a little bit behind that I think they like even more. But if they do, there's a couple guys that aren't great with double teams that are both pretty athletic and super quick off the snap that can rush the passer, which means they could potentially stay on the field in nickel or on third down. Justin Matabuke is kind of the leader among them. But if you're looking for a sleeper in the late rounds, Raekwon Davis, Alabama, informal combine interview with the Steelers. He played at the Senior Bowl, and you know what? His best year was his sophomore year. He had 10 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and guess who his coach was? Carl Dunbar, who is the defensive line coach of the Steelers right now. That means they know him. They know who he is. So if they believe in him, they're going to have the inside track on a guy like Raekwon Davis. You got any opinions on him or any nose tackles?
No, I didn't do a whole lot of research on Pittsburgh. I just did like fun things for Pittsburgh. So that's
All
my
right.
input on this draft analysis.
I'll do safeties and then I'll ask you again if you have anything to safeties. There's a pretty high likelihood that the Steelers could take one. I think based on the things that they trend towards in their high picks, Antoine Winfield is your guy. We talked a little bit about him, but here's why he would go to Pittsburgh. His dad played in the NFL for like 9 years and made the Pro Bowl. And guess what? He played for Mike Tomlin when he was
I
on
was
the
just
Vikings.
about to ask that. Yeah.
Antoine Winfield was academic all conference 3 years. And he was the team MVP last year. Steeler guy.
Row the boat.
So,
Go Gophers.
so if they take a safety in the second round, Antoine Winfield is the type of guy he played in Minnesota. And if you like highlight tape and you like watching a dude that's 5'9" just tackle the shit out of people,
Yeah.
he's fun. He just like, he shoots that gap and he just goes after it. He is a fun guy to watch. I loved Cesar Ruiz. Interior offensive line is definitely a possibility for Pittsburgh early because Marquise Blair, he is going to retire when Roethlisberger does. They also have guard stuff going on. So I'm going to go a different direction from Cesar. Lloyd Cushenberry was the center at LSU. They had a dominant everything this year. He's similar to Cesar. He's big, he's long, he's tough. He can anchor while on the move, so he's a guy that can pull. Negative on him is that he's not a bully. He's not the type of lineman that puts you on the ground and holds you there like a big meanie, which frankly, that's what you want. You do want offensive linemen that do that. He's also really smart. He's like savvy with twists and stunts, and when people are trying to run around, he's going to pick that stuff up. The Steelers are going to like him because they interviewed him at the combine. He was at the Senior Bowl. He was a team captain. He was the team MVP. And he was given the number 18 jersey at LSU, which means you are a person of high character.
Hmm.
So this is a type of guy that's low risk in all those ways for the Steelers. He can come in and immediately be a swing guy for them if anybody goes down with an injury or they want to put a sixth guy on the line or whatever. Lloyd Cushenberry out of LSU. You got any offensive line stuff you think the Steelers?
No, Cesar Ruiz is the man.
Yeah, I like Cesar Ruiz too, and
Yeah,
he was probably the guy I was going to talk about, but he seems to really be
trending.
jumping up, and I
Yeah.
think that that could mean that a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry maybe is the guy that falls to the Steelers. A couple of these guys might be reaches. These guys might all be gone. Who
I mean,
knows?
and that's another situation where I talked about with the tackles and when we were talking about Cincinnati. It's like, okay, look, this guy played center against probably at the very least the two best defensive fronts other than Clemson in the nation in Georgia
Yeah,
and Alabama.
yeah,
Florida has a great defensive front. Like this guy has seen serious pro level
yeah.
talent already.
That's a great point. One that I meant to bring up, but I got so excited in my momentum that I didn't bring it up. So thank you. Uh, I really think I'm the only one left that believes this, but I really think the Steelers could go tight end. In my opinion, I would hope they traded back before they do it. I hope the Steelers trade back in general, just because they only have a couple picks. And I think that the second, third round of this draft is full of players that
Yeah.
a well coached team could develop into situational playmakers and benefiters of the whole success of the team early in their careers this year. So the tight end that I think best fits the Steelers is Cole Kmet. He's out of Notre Dame. He's the one guy that I think has all of it. And the Steelers need a guy that can actually block. And Cole Kmet is a tenacious blocker. Like he goes after it. He's not perfect technically. He's got work to do there. Um, but he's got the attitude. And that's what you want out of a college kid. Like you don't expect these college kids that are super good at catching the ball and scoring touchdowns to be perfect blockers. So he definitely needs to work on the technique, but he's great running up the seam. He's got good hands. He's big. He's not like a crazy athlete like some of these top tight ends you've seen come out over the last few years, like the kid in Hawkinson and in Detroit and the Noah Fant in Denver.
Yeah.
Um, but the Steelers have two excellent pass catching tight ends. He would be a third. Plus, he's got the attitude blocking wise, and he's young, so he's got a father and an uncle that played in the NFL. And for the record, at Dayton or at Notre Dame, he played two sports, baseball, where he was also drafted, and had two majors. This kid has work ethic. This will be the first year of his life that he's only played one sport. So guess what he'll have time to do? Learn blocking technique. Uh, so I like Cole Kmet a lot. And then the last two positions are wide receiver and running back. Basically, the Steelers don't need these positions, in my opinion, but I think they're the ones that are going to hold the most value because some of the people that I named might not be there, and they're going to take the best player. The two wide receivers that I've seen linked to the Steelers the most are Jalen Rager out of TCU, who he's got a father that played 9 years in the NFL. He's a crazy athlete. He's another Steelers early pick trait. He's 21. Um, if you want to watch really fun football clips of people making other people not tackle you, Jalen Rager is a good guy to look at. And Michael Pittman, whose also father played in the NFL while Mike Tomlin was coach in Tampa Bay. He was a team captain, a team MVP, and Michael Pittman was all conference on offense and special teams. So this is a guy again that comes in and makes immediate difference. And he was also at the Senior Bowl, so that means the team officials got to meet him and talk to him, and all that nonsense. So Michael Pittman and Jalen Rager. If you want another wide receiver, two guys to look at. Joey now is your time. Running back. It's possible that running backs aren't going to get drafted till the second round.
I know.
They're all convinced they don't matter. So I think the Steelers could end up picking between 3 or 4 of the top 6 running backs if they so choose. Tell me why Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be such a person that you make that face for when he lines up against the Ravens.
I would die if the Steelers got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I am convinced that he is the best running back in this draft. I don't. Jonathan Taylor, we've seen the guys that are workhorse backs and the shelf lives on these running backs already. Like, he's got a shitload of carries at Wisconsin. Like, he's great, like, whatever. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like, I watched this. I watched a lot of LSU this year. I kind of like fell in love with them
Sure.
in the Alabama game, and then it was like, oh, like why am I not watching this team every week? He's small, but he doesn't play small. He's very versatile. He can run inside or outside. He'll take defenders on one. He's out there trucking dudes on the sideline in the national championship game. Like, this guy is such a fun running back, and that could be the Le'Veon that they lost. Like, he is scary, scary good, really versatile, and I would cry if the Steelers drafted him.
Le'Veon's a great comparison for a couple reasons. He's awesome out of the backfield as a receiver, and he also lacks home run speed. He's a guy that gets caught when he
Yep.
breaks a run from like behind the 50. The safety is going to catch him. The corner's going to catch him. That's kind of the one knock on him. But if I'm going to add one awesome positive on him, it's when you watch his highlight tapes, because he's short, he gets going so fast that when you're looking at the refresh rate on your video compared to his leg speed, his legs always look so funny right away because he's moving them so fast. He gets his legs going right away. And that's, I think, a big part of the reason that he's as good at breaking tackles as he is and stuff, because he's always churning. And that, because his legs move so quick, he's quick laterally, he's quick to get to top speed. He could be a good Steeler. I don't think he's the most likely Steeler because I think he's got a similar skill set to James Conner, and I think they would want to blend differing skill sets. Because of that, if available, which is probably unlikely, but possible, Jonathan Taylor is a prototypical Steeler. The Steelers like very big running backs, which Jonathan Taylor is like the biggest. He's like 220. They like their 220 plus, Think Jerome Bettis, but also think Le'Veon Bell. Think like basically any running back they draft that's had any success. They like their big boys. The crazy thing is that Jonathan Taylor has home run speed. Like, if you get him into the backfield, he will outrun safeties. He will outrun those corners. He's got crazy vision, and he sets up his blocks. But the one bummer is that Wisconsin's offensive line is so crazy that once he sets up the blocks, you almost never see him have to break a tackle. So it's hard to tell if his production will translate because the Steelers' offensive line is pretty darn good, but they're better at pass protection, and he will have to break a tackle. Like, he will not get 6, 7, 10 yards down the field before he has to just juke one safety. Like, people are going to get their tackle, but I'm just not 100% sure. But he's the Steelers' prototype. I can almost guarantee you that if all the guys we're going to talk about, which there will be one more, are available, they'll take Jonathan Taylor. The other guy I liked, Cam Akers, out of Florida State. He's like the opposite of Jonathan Taylor. He had to break all the tackles in the backfield. Like, he he did so much stuff in the backfield that is crazy. You're like, dude, if you just make 2 blocks for this guy. And the one critique I saw of him is that, like, he maybe doesn't have great vision, but it's like I really tried to watch for it in the highlights I watched. And for the record, highlights are not a fair way to scout a player in college football. But guess what? I did it, and you're listening. So, in my opinion, in the highlights, Cam Akers did set up blocks when they were available to set up. And when there was a hole created, he shot through it really quickly. This is a dude that's got crazy lateral abilities, and he churns his legs not as fast as Clyde, but he's got power in those strides. He'll break those arm tackles. And for the record, the Steelers interviewed him at the combine, which means they dig him. They've got a little bit of a crush. They passed him a little note with little pink hearts on it. They might have said, "Do you like me?"
Check yes or no.
Yes or no. Yeah. So I threw a lot of positions at you guys. That's both the glory and the curse of the Steelers kind of situation, is that they probably could use any or all of these players, but they don't maybe need most of them. I think if I were a betting man, the Steelers will probably draft a running back or a wide receiver in the second round, because there is so much depth of talent and there will be such a talented player at that position. They will be able to take a guy who can come in and, even in a shortened offseason and a shortened everything, make a difference for their team in year one. And that's probably the only position where they'll be able to do that. So that's why I think it'll happen, even though it's on my list, their least need.
Yeah, I haven't watched Cam Akers much, and like I said, Jonathan Taylor. My only concern with him, it's a wrestling term, but his bump card. You know, they say that wrestlers can only take so many bumps in their career, and you never know which bump is going to be the last bump. Like,
Have you ever
the
watched Jonathan Taylor's highlights?
yeah,
It's basically like he was running track,
he had so many carries though. Like, I mean,
but it's like he was just running track. He had so many carries where he didn't get touched.
that's just his highlights, Chad.
Yeah.
So that would be my concern. It's like, how many miles on a guy already? Is he's a senior, right? Or a junior?
Yes. Junior.
So
Junior.
junior.
Yes.
So he's coming out early. That's good, as far as that's concerned. But
Yeah.
I had one more player I wanted to talk about that we've talked about before with the Steelers, which is a fun uh, little game. Jalen Hurts. Any more exploration into Jalen Hurts rumors? Have you seen any other mocks with him or anything like that?
I mean, what's his face that you put his face on my face for this podcast?
Kuiper.
Yeah. Kuiper put him to the Steelers in the second round. So, uh,
It's interesting.
I mean, I think if you have all the trust in the Steelers, all of it, fine. But if you have any belief that the Steelers can compete this year, you just can't believe that. You just can't believe or want it. Um, so no, I didn't look at him at all. Basically, I very very briefly.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd be so surprised if they take a quarterback. They have 6 picks,
Yeah.
and they have 2 years left of Ben in his current contract. He's 38 years old. They've drafted quarterbacks, I think, the last 2 years. Maybe like in drafting quarterbacks. You can't, like, you either shit or get off the pot, right? And the Steelers don't have the shit. They don't have the first round pick. So, like, it's just, I just don't see it. I I I suggested him as a possibility, and I mean, sure. Like, dude, they're the professionals. Like, the real scouting department. So, maybe they see it, and I hope they're right. But I don't think it's likely. I think they're in win now mode, which probably sounds silly, especially to you, because the Ravens are like clearly the class of the division. surely in your opinion, and almost certainly in most people's opinion. But the Steelers, despite that, are in win now mode. They
Yeah.
have a fair amount of aging talent, especially their quarterback, and like that's the position they're in. They're in like, let's compete while we know we can and see where the chips fall. And drafting a very questionable project for the fourth time in a row with one of your very few picks. It's just in a shortened off season, and like I don't know, I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and with what we've seen of the dominant defenses in the league over the last 4 or 5 years, it's like you can't squander this defense because you'll blink and lose a couple guys and it's gone.
yeah,
So fair enough.
yeah, yeah. So I did minimal research on the quarterbacks as a simple prayer. If I pay little enough attention, maybe they cease to exist.
All right, everybody. Well, we hope we got you primed up for the NFL draft on Thursday night, especially from the perspective of the best division in football, the AFC North.
Word.
It should be fun. I'm really excited. Like it's a glimpse of sports that we're gonna get on Thursday. I think we'll try to scrounge something up as far as a watch party or something like that goes. So stay tuned. James Carmen said, "Stop ducking me." I don't know who that is.
I don't either. I thought I was
We might be getting
paying
trolled
attention to that
on
stuff.
YouTube.
Oh, snap, dude. You better stop ducking James.
YouTube trolls James Carmen. Whoever's ducking James Carmen, cut that shit out.
For real.
Face him like a man.
6 feet away though.
Yeah, meet us in Temecula, James Carmen. Anyways, all right, everybody. He said, "Stop lying to the fans, man." Have a good week, everybody. We will hopefully see you Thursday. Keep an eye on the page. We'll shoot out some kind of plan and probably some stupid little internet game over the next couple days.
Just wait until post draft when we've watched 5 more minutes of highlights on the
That's
players
right.
have actually drafted, and we can give you the deepest, darkest, fullest analysis that you can ever imagine from two people with small children in the next room that don't have any time.
Come here and watch us bury the Bengals. Because it's kind of what we do.
If they trade back, it's no holds barred.
All right, everybody. Have a good one.